Okay, folks, we may need your help because we're kind of needy. But is that the right word to ask us if we are trying to establish what we actually need or what we want to learn? So that's what we're going to talk about today, something that's come up recently about the terminology we use in trying to get to the core of what people want to get out of any course, any program that you do with them. So it's an interesting conversation. We thought we'd tackle it. Let's do it now. Yes, indeed. It is the show, the #1 show about the business of culture and the culture of business, episode 187, Two Chaps, Many Cultures. How are you today, pal?
I am fantastic, even though I need to feel even better.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about needs, there's a song that comes to mind there. And some of you may know that I'm a big fan of the artist who went by the name Prince and who left his earthly dwellings too soon. There's a song on the album Parade that's "You Need Another Lover Like You Need a Hole in Your Head." So that comes up when I think about need. Need is, I'm not sure if that's the word I want us in our profession to use any longer, and it's really hard to get rid of it because I haven't found a good synonym yet. But we'll talk about why that is relevant. So what you said came up recently. What did come up for you, Brett?
Because we were using the term needs assessment. It is a format, maybe a template that possibly is sent out to participants or potential participants of any program in a corporate setting. Might be a big group program. So kind of an efficient way to, I guess, at least start the engagement with those people is to just generically send out a set of questions that may or may not refer to the actual content that you're going to deliver, but establishes some type of interaction with the clients up front. And they're called needs assessment. So and the questions go out to say, what do you want to get out of this? And so I guess it was challenged recently when someone said, well, this is actually, and I've never heard this term, I probably have to do some more research, but de-rolling. It is a kind of you're inferring that the people that you're going to teach are in need of something and therefore you're the only one to bring it to them. And does it really matter in the case of the program that you're going to do? Are you going to fundamentally change your program because somebody says, well, I need this and it really wasn't what you were going to deliver? Or is it not? Is that against what you thought the company, the client themselves have told you to deliver? So it's a multifaceted conversation, but I think it gets around the terminology of and yesterday when I brought this to Christian so rightly, this is why we love bouncing things off each other. He said, well, doesn't that term needs bring up? You said that you bring up the kind of the scarcity mindset, right? That's kind of the influence.
It's a sweeping generalization, obviously, and I'm known for those, and you can rightfully accuse me of such. Yeah, I think when people use the word need, that triggers something in my thought process. So, and this is part of my communications training that I've had over the years. When people use the word need, my brain immediately goes to, well, are you sure you don't have it yet? Have you looked everywhere? And how do you know that you have it once you do? What have you done? If you don't have it now, what have you done in the past to get it, the thing that you need, or let's say want or wish maybe? And let's distinguish what would happen if you didn't have it. What would happen if you continue to not have that thing or that emotion or that state or that resource, right? And that mindset that of scarcity that is evoked when I hear that word need is, well, have you tried to get by without it? Who tells you that you have to have this, right? Which brings about the conversation of Maslow's pyramid or hierarchy of human needs or necessities, right? There we have it again, human needs. There, of course, are things that we as humans cannot live without. That's food, shelter, physical safety, protection from the elements or from predators or diseases, right? So there we go. Those will be prerequisites to continued existence. Now, when we talk about delivering a program, delivering new information to an individual or a group of people, do they really need that? Or is there somebody making that presumption? Well, we think those of you here in that group that we've identified, you don't have this, so we determine that this is what you need. So we make basically an imposition. We make a kind of a condescending decision for you. There is something you don't have yet. We don't know that exactly, but we claim it to be so. Therefore, you get this. And that is something that may, as you said, de-roll people, right? Because it does not enroll them for the learning, because that may make people feel like, wait a second, who says I don't have that? Who says that I want this? I didn't choose to get this. And if I have it, what do you want me to do with it?
Well, I'd found myself already re-scripting emails to people because I must have subconsciously thought that this word needs sound like I am assuming some kind of lack of the participants, of the people that I'm going to work with. And you and I both know, in the hundreds of programs that we've done and executives that we've worked with, these people, they don't need is kind of not something that they really want to hear, or possibly is subconsciously not affirming for them. And that's understandable. We all have egos. I have them, right? To tell me I need something immediately says, well, I am less than what I thought I was. So why I've changed my scripting to reflect more of, here's what I can offer you to build on top of the skills that you already have. Because that affirms that they've got a wonderful set of skills. They've got this wonderful, building block. And I think that reference, it's a coincidence maybe, but the reference to that Maslow's hierarchy, because that was actually used in an example of where I drew this topic out of. And at what point do we establish that a person has or is on that hierarchy? People are at different points. So you have to establish at what point are they at, to say, we affirm your ability and your wonderful human uniqueness is that you've got a great baseline, a great set of skills already. Let's take that, and let's say if we're going to expand our boundaries outside of, in this one example, expand our boundaries outside of our home country, and now we have to lead and motivate and encourage outside of our culture, then what we're doing is we're taking the wonderful skills you've got and we're building on that, and we're adding cultural competence to it. So that's not a saying that you're completely useless, you don't know what you're doing, so therefore we're going to start from scratch and this is going to be revolutionary in that case. So I kind of subconsciously done that. And I think it may, hopefully we're serving the clients better using those types of vernacular. I'd be interested, anybody who's watching this, if they've consciously noticed this in terms of the scripting that they use in emails, which is always a danger of templating, right? Templates are not, I tend to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn profiles, just to kind of get a sense of who the person is, what their title is, how they show up in a professional sense. So, and that's why we did a whole series on Bank, a couple of weeks ago, where that's one tool where we've used that. So there's tools at our disposal to be able to do this without assuming that people are just in need of our services and saying we're here to solve all your problems, because if we're not doing we're not serving them properly that way. That's my take on it anyway.
No, and this is something that I think is where our brains become a bit lazy, because at some point there was a decision made that we call something by a certain terminology. We give this a name. And at some point, the inquiry of information that precedes a program delivery, that precedes a group facilitation, we call that a needs assessment. And that went into autopilot, and we don't think about the terminology anymore. The same is true for what we talked about earlier this week about cancel culture, quote unquote cancel culture, because we're not using we're not using certain words any longer that used to be de rigueur, that used to be the words that we used. And now we recognize maybe these are terms that are hurtful or non-supportive or miss the mark quite a bit. So we decide not to use these words anymore, find better words. Language has power. The words we give our thoughts, the words we give our feelings, the words we give things matter, right? So we just continued calling it a needs assessment. I had one last week with a potential client, the human resources representative or the learning and development person, plus the operational person, and they talk with me about another person in their organization that they would like me to coach. So we're doing a needs assessment. I was very happy that that person wasn't present for that needs assessment, because that would have arguably made that person a bit uncomfortable, right? So, and it sets the student or the learners up for failure just as much as it sets the facilitator up for failure. I think if we're creating this involuntary, without wanting to, without being aware of it, that we're doing it, but if we're creating this imbalance of, hey, I have something you don't have, and this is what you down here need, so I'm going to give it to you, that creates this artificial imbalance of competency. And with that could be a trap for the facilitator to feel like, yeah, I'm the smartest person in the room. And it could also lead to involuntarily participants who think like, well, how dumb am I? And who decided that I don't know all this? And who decided that I need to learn all this? How does this apply to my life, my work? Where was I asked whether this is going to help me? Or when are you going to make the case that learning this will actually make my life and work better? So that's an imbalance that is often artificially created without any of the involved parties wanting it, simply because we're calling it the wrong word.
Yeah. And this brought me to thinking about how important it is to establish before you even try to establish rapport with the group of people you're working with, you need to, just as your situation called into light, there is a real need to be explicit about how you're going to establish these needs with the people who are asking you to deliver this program. So we've kind of got to be willing, we've got to play this kind of humility card and say, I'm just here to serve you and the people you want me to serve, but you also need to be kind of rather bold and say, let me challenge you that you may be making assumptions about the learning requirements. I almost said needs. The learning requirements or of the people that they're trying to impart this knowledge, or at least provide this knowledge for. So that may actually take, a sense of humility on our behalf to say, well, look, if your idea is not that I'm able to kind of use or add some time, the question is that if you've got a certain amount of time you've got to deliver a program in, is that enough time to allow for us as a facilitator to do that exploratory work with the participants, to actually really in real time try and get the needs of their to what skills have they've got, what are their baseline skills, and what are we going to build on them. And sometimes that might take, I know we're kind of like, we're independent contractors here, we're trying to run a business and we're trying to pay our bills. At the end of the day, sometimes you might have to say no to these clients when they won't give you the ability to do that, because you could go ahead and think, I'm just going to go and do it and bank the money and I'm going to, tick the box. But is that, would it be better if you actually started to push back a little bit and build a rapport with the company and say, no, I think this is this is my way of approaching it. I think it'll be much more in the service of the people you are trying to provide support for and add skills to. And plus, I think if I can prove myself that this will be advantageous for you, you'll come back and pay me more money to come and do it again, right? So yes, there's a commercial benefit to this as well, even though it feels uncomfortable to do it in the first place.
My journey around this needing or having to or musting, that's not a word. That journey began some 10 years ago when I first was introduced to NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and how our words are reflective of our thought patterns and thought processing. And there are some questioning frameworks you can use when people resort to these phrases of needing, having to, I must. Well, I need to do this and this. And that's in NLP, we call this a meta model violation. We say, well, so you need to, what would happen if you didn't?
Yeah.
So that question.
Yeah, that's important, because so what is the, and I'm sorry to jump in, but we just because I was on a webinar today, that's a very question, right? So you've just coined it perfectly, asking that compassionate question: what happens if you don't do this?
Right. What is the detriment to you not having what you think you need? Right.
Right.
So and that question forces the person to actually articulate the need, and it will become clear whether it's an actual need in terms of continuing my physical existence, or is it only something I want because I feel like it.
Right.
And that's maybe something that would be nice to have, right?
Yeah.
Another question would be, not, you could ask, well, what would happen if you didn't have it? If somebody says, well, I need this and this, another question would be, well, what's stopping you? That's maybe a little less compassionate, but that's calling it out. So if you need it that hard, if it's life necessary for you, what are you complaining to me about that you needed? What has been stopping you to get it if it's so necessary for you, right? So those there's a whole catalog of question frameworks where you can unpack somebody's self-imposed limitations. So if people are using words like I have to, I need, I must, that is an indicator of a self-imposed limitation. That's nothing wrong. We all have those, right? We all come with pattern thinking and biases and neural connections that have been shaped over our lifetime. Having somebody question that in a, I call it a ruthlessly compassionate format, saying, hey, what's stopping you, or what's going to happen if you don't get this? Tell me about it. I want to know more. That helps us, the person who gets asked these questions, to take that mental sidestep and look at this and do I really need, or do I choose to go after this? Is that my choice? Now we're in the magic, because we have choice. We're not forced into anything. There's always another option, or maybe a third or fourth option. And helping others to see that other option makes that process of collecting information a little easier, and there will be less of a power and knowledge imbalance, right? So we're all in this together. We're all having a shared experience. So how can we, as facilitators of cultural intelligence programs, how can we serve you best? What is it that your group would benefit most from? Let's talk about this. We don't have to use the word need, have to, limitation. I'm pontificating. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. But I think that I also thought, and you alluded to it before, about setting yourself up for failure if you don't actually do this in an effective way. Because if you show up, I'm not saying this is something that like a HR person or somebody who's charged with kind of obtaining and buying training materials and training delivery workshops is going to do. But is there a sense that perhaps if you bring an outside facilitator in, you just tell them exactly what you want them to deliver. They go and deliver it in good faith, but it's not what the participants thought it was going to be, or they feel like they're there because they're obligated by it. And then your reviews and your feedback is negative. Then there's the sense that you don't have any comeback after that. You can say all you like, well, that's what you told me to deliver, but it's not the same thing that your people expected. So I wasn't in that conversation. But then again, you could be just, you have no say in it. You're kind of branded as somebody who's perhaps not the best facilitator for that role, but you haven't been given the chance to support your own success. In terms of delivery.
If you're in an organization where you're hiring outside consultants and facilitators to improve the learning process for your teams, that is either a sign that you don't have that skill set within your organization, that's why you're farming it out, or your team has stopped listening to the person who's been teaching most in the organization. I'm not sure what it is, but ideally it is because you, in your organization, you focus on doing what you do well, making a thing, producing product, serving a service, or whatever it is your company does, whatever problem you solve for your clients. That's what you do best. That does not necessarily include the work we do. The work we do will support you to do your best, but that doesn't mean that you have that skill set in-house. That's why you talk to people like Brett and myself, right? So what you consider to be a need for your team may actually not be it. So as you farm this out, as you bring in outside competency, trust your facilitator that they will, together with your team, identify the best path forward. That's why facilitators who are worth their salt will give you an advisory, or will serve to you in an advisory capacity, helping you define the curriculum that will serve your team best, and not just take some cookie cutter thing off the shelf and say, yeah, I've delivered this 7 million times, I'm going to deliver it again, and because we determined that's your need.
Yeah, well, we need materials, we need a framework, and they're a good guide. But I often say that, these are just, I say to my clients, I say, here's a booklet, looks good. What's that saying? If when you don't have knowledge, what you need is a deck, right? Here's the deck, here's the material. Now we may not actually. I tell people now, I may kind of discombobulate you, and I might bounce back and forth in this material, but that is going to be dependent on what you are identifying in this process as things that you want to talk about. And that's a different conversation than sit down, shut up, I'm going to give you a lecture. It's a whole different
it has happened to me before that I worked with. Well, and by the way, thank you, Karen, for your support. Love it. It has happened to me that I had clients, I had program participants, and the materials that I had prepared were not ready for what the client asked for in the moment. Throughout the program, it became apparent that there was a wish or a desire to talk about or add a skill or add knowledge about a certain topic that was never discussed prior to the workshop or the training, was not included in the materials that I had prepared, and yet it became a cornerstone element of that program because we allowed ourselves to address it in that moment, right? So relying on prefabricated templates will only get us so far. It will serve us well in many similar situations. Now, as those of you who are in our field as well, you might have come across this before, that you find yourself with a good material set, a booklet, a slide deck, a book, whatever presentation, whatever concept you bring to the program, you will have that with you, and you might find that and it just reached its limit, and there's still 4 hours to go, and my participants have questions that what I brought would not answer. So how do I respond to this now? And that's where I would say that's where the inexperienced and the more experienced facilitators go into different operational modes.
Yeah, absolutely. Big topic. I mean, we could go down this, as many of our topics are. We like to kind of scratch the surface a little bit, and for in kind of service of us wanting to go deeper, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what your experience is. Are you re-scripting things? Do you use the word needs assessment still? Is there other terminology available in the vernacular that we can possibly use as a community of facilitators, trainers, intercultural peeps, full stop? And I just want to call out Karen. Karen is a classic example where, you know, her and I work professionally together, and Karen is a classic example of always constantly really checking in and seeing if what the services she provides is valuable to the client, right? This is a rare thing to find, because many people can be just very kind of siloed and not go out of their realm, especially, and I think in Karen's case, I'm not saying this because she's here and I'm trying to make her feel good about herself. I would just identify someone like that who's willing to go that extra mile and step outside when they find that they're working in service of people that they feel that they're passionate about the topic, right? In our case, the intercultural world, right? And Karen is a classic example of that, where it basically is just constant. That's why we call her radar. You know, that radar in MASH, you know, it always knows what you need before you need it. It's like constantly just surprising when you think, oh, I think I need to find this, and all of a sudden it comes up. This is a skill set, right? The skill set.
Well, it also is a mindset. It's not only a skill set, it's also a mindset. It's a mindset of being of service and being a listener rather than a transmitter, a sender. And this is, I think, where the big danger lies for any trainer, facilitator, corporate, adult education professional. The minute you think highly of yourself is where you lose touch. It was one of my mentors who imparted this on me when we did stage training. Before the risers in the bigger rooms where the 2 or 3 steps lead up to the riser. He said, before you walk up there, pause, get grounded, look at the audience, and tell yourself, either quietly or out loud, depends on how you handle this, it's not about me. It is not about me. It is not about me. It's about everybody here in the room. And that's what you describe of Karen is, I think she has, even not knowing her, it sounds like she is not about herself. It's about contributing what's best to the team, right? And this is what makes a good facilitator. They don't care about their own needs. They don't think they know what the audience needs. They are in the moment. They're able to respond to what comes up during the process. And that's a different form of eliciting information and responding to it. That's not what a need assessment is. So that, I think the more we talk about it, the more I think about this, the more impassioned do I get about this wrong choice of words. Absolutely.
Well, let's keep the conversation going, people. Just tell us what you think. Do you disagree, agree? You're going to go on. You can go on needing, we're not going to stop you from using needs assessment as a term. That's fine. You can do what you want. We're not the policemen of needs, but we are the policemen of this show. And this is our show, the #1 show on the planet of the culture of business and the business of culture. Another episode 187 on a beautiful Wednesday, where Karen actually informed me we've got some snow coming, which might just get her fired. But that's all right. I mean, we take the good and the bad. I mean, we take the good and the bad with people, you can, not every day is a diamond.
People, don't freak out. Just a little bit of snow doesn't get people fired. I don't know what he's talking about. It's too late today. He's off his rocker. I'll see you again tomorrow. Two chaps, many cultures, out for now.
See
Bye.
ya.